The elevator smelled of lemony disinfectant and quiet desperation. For Maria, it was the scent of her father's sacrifice. Each night, as she pushed her cleaning cart through the gleaming, empty halls of Athelgard Industries, she felt the ghost of his dreams in the air. He had been a brilliant engineer in his home country, but here, he was the janitor. Also, she could have the education he never finished. Her father's hands, which once designed bridges, now scrubbed toilets. And Maria, who aced her physics classes by day, mopped floors by night to help him. They were a team bound by a silent promise of a better future. On the 42nd floor, the sanctum of the CEO, the air changed. It was all cold glass and anxious energy. Tonight, it was thicker than usual. A small group of executives, including the legendary and notoriously sharp-tongued CEO, Alistair Finch, were huddled around a large whiteboard, their faces drawn. Maria kept her head down, polishing the already spotless railing outside the conference room. The words, however, were unavoidable. "It's a simple physics problem." Finch's voice, crisp and condescending, cut through the glass. "A harmonic resonance. Our new satellite array is vibrating itself to pieces on deployment. We've tried every damping material, every software patch. The launch window closes in 48 hours. $200 million in contracts vaporized because we can't solve a simple vibration." He snatched a marker and scrawled a complex equation on the board. "Fix this," he mocked, his voice dripping with sarcasm as he turned to his exhausted team. "And I'll personally hand you a check for $200 million. A tense silence followed. The experts, with their six-figure salaries and Ivy League degrees, stared at the numbers as if they were a locked door. Maria's hand paused on the railing. Harmonic resonance. The term echoed from her textbook. She remembered a story her father told her years ago, about a famous bridge that swayed and collapsed because the wind created a resonant frequency. The solution wasn't to fight the force, but to disrupt the pattern. She thought of her father's tired eyes. She thought of the arrogance in Finch's voice. A dangerous, foolish idea sparked in her mind. One of the VPs, a man named David, stepped out, rubbing his temples. He gave Maria a kind, wary smile. He was one of the few who ever acknowledged her, sometimes asking about her studies. "Long night, David?" Maria asked softly, her heart hammering against her ribs. "The longest, Maria. We're about to lose it all on a problem that sounds like it should have a simple answer." He sighed. It's like it's just singing itself apart, and we can't find the right note to stop the song." The right note. That was it. The confirmation. As David walked towards the coffee machine, Maria's eyes darted to the whiteboard. She saw it. The formula was complex, but the principle behind it was fundamental. Without a sound, she slipped into the empty conference room. Her cleaning gloves felt absurd against the whiteboard. She didn't erase Finch's equation. Instead, next to it, she drew a simple, elegant diagram. She drew the satellite's long, delicate booms, and she drew small, asymmetrical weights attached at strategic points. It was the principle of the tuned mass damper, but applied with a childlike simplicity. Instead of trying to stop the vibration head-on, her solution would create a counter-vibration, a dissonant note that would cancel out the destructive song. She wrote a single, brief sentence underneath. "Don't fight the music. Change the key." Then, she fled, her cart squeaking down the hall, her face burning with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. The next morning, the office exploded in a frenzy. Maria, arriving for her morning classes, found the building buzzing. Whispers of a breakthrough, a miracle, filled the air. She saw Alistair Finch walking through the lobby, not with his usual scowl, but with a look of stunned bewilderment. He called an all-hands meeting. From the back of the vast auditorium, in her simple jeans and sweater, Maria watched. "Last night," Finch began, his voice uncharacteristically quiet, "an anonymous individual solved a problem that my best and brightest could not. They didn't use a supercomputer. They used a fundamental understanding of physics and profound clarity. He put Maria's diagram on the massive screen. A murmur went through the crowd. "This solution," he continued, "is being implemented as we speak. It's going to work. It will save the company $200 million and 10,000 times that in future business." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. But they didn't stick around to claim the reward. They left this. He pointed to the sentence. "Don't fight the music. Change the key." I have spent my entire career believing that success was about being the smartest, the toughest, the most relentless person in the room. Finch said, his voice cracking with a rare emotion. But this was smarter. This was wiser. It was an act of pure, selfless intelligence. And I need to know who did it. Security was instructed to review the logs. It didn't take long. The night access records showed only one non-essential person on the 42nd floor, Maria Rodriguez, cleaning staff. A few hours later, Maria was called to the CEO's office. Her father was there too, summoned from his day shift, his face pale with worry. He thought she was in trouble. Finch stood up from his desk as they entered. He looked at Maria, then at her father, then back at the security photo of her entering the conference room. "Was it you?" he asked, his voice soft. Maria nodded, unable to speak. "Why?" Finch asked, genuine curiosity overwhelming his usual demeanor. "Why not stay? Why not claim the money?" Maria looked at her father, then back at the CEO, her voice a steady whisper. "The money wasn't the point, Mr. Finch. The point was that my father, who you see in a uniform, was an engineer who designed bridges that are still standing. He taught me that the strongest solution is often the simplest, and that true strength isn't in proving you're better than others, but in helping them stand taller. I did it for him, to show him his lessons were louder than your mockery." The emotional climax of the story hung in the air. Alastair Finch, a man who built an empire on cold, hard logic, was utterly disarmed by a young woman's quiet act of devotion. He saw, in that moment, not a janitor's daughter, but the legacy of an engineer. He saw the profound humanity he had been missing. He didn't hand her a check for $200 million. Instead, he did something more meaningful. He established the Rodriguez Foundation, a $20 million fund in her father's name to support immigrant engineers seeking to re-certify in the United States. He then offered Maria a full scholarship to any university of her choice, with a guaranteed internship at Ethelgard. But the true, uplifting conclusion came a year later. The satellite, with Maria's simple dampers, deployed perfectly. Alastair Finch, at the launch party, didn't toast the stock price. He held up his glass and said, "To clarity, to kindness, and to remembering that the most brilliant mind in the room might not be the one with the most expensive title, but the one with the most selfless heart, and the courage to share its light." Maria, now a promising engineering student, stood beside her father, who no longer wore a janitor's uniform, but the proud smile of a man whose own deferred dreams were finally, beautifully, being built by his daughter. They had changed the key, not just for a satellite, but for an entire company, and most importantly, for themselves.